We got Pat Kriegler for you today. I don't remember what the story is. Let's watch it together.
A story that was written by J. O'Callaghan. Honest, that's his name, and it's perfect on today, isn't it? This is called The Bubble. The bubble floated down from heaven, and it landed in a field in a village. And it was enormous. Now, there were people out in the field, and they put down their equipment, their size and their sickles and all that stuff, and they started looking at this beautiful bubble. And one guy said, "Look at that bubble. It's as big as a horse." And then somebody else said, no, it's bigger than a horse." Well, the whole village got around this bubble, and they started holding hands, and they started singing, and they started going round and round this bubble. And they were having a good time. Look at that bubble. Look at that beautiful bubble. What a beautiful bubble. And they danced and they sang until out of the woods came their king. He was a lean, mean, nasty king. And he came out and he looked at that bubble and he said, "Trouble." And one of the kids said, "No, Your Majesty, that's just a bubble." "Oh, you're fools, all of you. It's trouble. Let me show you." And he got out his dagger. And the dagger was very sharp, just like his nose. And he went to that bubble, and he took that dagger, and he slashed at that bubble. Uh-oh. There was trouble, because the king was in the bubble and couldn't get out. Now that's trouble. "Get me out of here," he hollered. And the villagers tried, but there was no way they could get him out. And so he sat in that bubble and he thought, and a terrible smirk came over his face because he knew how he was going to get out. And he called for his knights. "Knight number 1, come and get me out of here," he said. And knight number 1 showed up. He was the Silver Knight, and he had a big horse, and he had a big lance. And he walked toward that bubble, and he had a little thought. What if I pierce that bubble and it pierces the king's neck? Ooh, that would be trouble. And the king hollered, "Get me out of here now." Okay. So the knight backed his white horse up, and he got ready, and he charged that bubble with that big lance, and the lance, when it hit the bubble, it bounced right off the bubble. And the king was still in the bubble. And it was trouble. Because how do you rule a kingdom when you're in a bubble? Trouble, trouble, trouble. "Bring me my second knight," said the king, "and do it now." And the second knight came, and he was the Green Knight. Now he had green hair, he had green eyes, and he had, get ready for this, green teeth. And he also had a sword. Oh, it was a nice sword. It was a big sword. And it was so sharp that when he cut the air bled. And so he looked at the king in that bubble, and he thought, uh-oh, if I pierce that bubble, I just might lop that king's head right off his shoulders. And that would be trouble. But the king hollered at him, "Get me out of here now." And so he went over to the bubble, and he swiped his sword at that bubble, and it bounced right off. And the king was still in the bubble. The king still had a lot of trouble. Because how can a king rule his village from a bubble? there was trouble, trouble, trouble. Finally, the king said, "Bring me the third knight." And everybody cheered because the third knight, he was the red knight. And he only used a golden chain. And the villagers had seen how he had vanquished armies with this golden chain. And so he came out and he looked at that bubble and he looked at that mean old nasty king. And he thought, okay, but what if my chain pierces that bubble and hits the king on his crown? That wouldn't be good. That would be trouble. And so the king hollered at him again, "Get me out now." So he got his arm ready and he whirred that thing right around his head, that golden chain, and he hit that bubble. And you know what happened, don't you? It bounced right off. And the king was still in the bubble. And there was trouble. Because how can a king rule his people from a bubble? Trouble, trouble, trouble. Meanwhile, this little girl, 3 years old, was walking with her dad. "Father, look at that beautiful bubble. See how pretty it is?" "No, no, daughter. That's not pretty. That's trouble. The king said it's trouble, so it's trouble." And the little girl just kind of laughed at her father and said, "If you treat a bubble like a bubble, it's going to act like a bubble." And she went over and she took her finger and her thumb and she popped the bubble. So you see, if you find a bubble and you treat it like a bubble, it'll act like a bubble. And that's my story about a bubble that wasn't trouble, it was just a bubble.
It's Jack. Here's the address. We'd love to hear from you. You can also order my book there. Bye now.